what do we do? Like, this isn't fair. What can we do? And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do, because every time we try to voice it, we get told to be quiet.
Don't complain and say, well, they don't want us to say anything. Well, of course they don't. They don't want the Olympics to look bad. So no one says anything. It helps the Olympics. Doesn't mean you have to be quiet. Say what you want. Say your opinion. Coach Greg, today we're going to be talking about the subject of should transgender females be allowed to compete in the Olympics against other women? We're going to be discussing what Sarah Silverman has said. We're going to talk about what Caitlyn Jenner is saying, and also Laurel Hubbard, who plans to become the first transgender female to compete in the Olympics as a woman. What do I think of this? What are my thoughts? What should the IOC do? We're going to get into everything in today's video. Trans weightlifter Laurel Hubbard plans to become the first female to compete in the Olympics. But being born male, does that not give her a genetic advantage over other females, making it unethical for her to compete with women? Well, to make it fair, the IOC implemented a rule that females must have their testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per liter. But does that make it fair? Of course not. I recently had my blood work done. I was at 14.4 nanomoles per liter. And before that, when I wasn't on HRT, I was between 3 and 4. That means Coach Greg, if I chose to identify as female, could literally compete in the Olympics as a female. Does that sound fair? Remember Isaiah Miranda had 21 nanograms per deciliter? That's equal to below 1. But yet females are allowed to compete at a 10. They just have to have it below 10 for a year. But consider this. You're born a male, extra testosterone, you're able to train with higher testosterone levels, bigger muscles, stronger bones your whole life. And then suddenly, for a year, you have lower levels, but still 3 or 4 times higher than the majority of women, and you can compete against those women. How on earth is that fair or ethical? So people have spoken out, and they're being told, don't talk about it. The athletes, we don't want you to say anything. But the athletes, they have freedom of speech. They don't have to listen to the IOC. If the IOC is saying don't talk about Laurel Hubbard, doesn't mean we can't. Here I am talking about it in a video. You can say what you want. So don't complain and say, well, they don't want us to say anything. Well, of course they don't. They don't want the Olympics to look bad. So no one says anything. It helps the Olympics. Doesn't mean you have to be quiet. Say what you want. Say your opinion. And am I attacking Laurel Hubbard? No. Everyone knows I support males, female, transgender, black, white, tall, short, skinny, fat, everybody. We're all circles. Everyone knows. I made plenty of videos about transgender in support. So I'm not transphobic in the slightest. And I'm not attacking Laurel Hubbard because guess what? Is it her fault that the IOC is allowing this? No. They're saying if it's below 10 nanomoles per liter, you can compete. She's like, well, I can compete. Why should I not compete? I'm allowed to. Why shouldn't I? So she should. So it's not her fault. So no one should be mad at her. She's doing what the IOC allows. They're saying you can go compete. Problem is, the IOC needs to change the rules. The current rules are not fair. It's not fair. If you're born a male, you have a genetic advantage. It's not fair to then transition to female and compete against other women. It isn't fair that you were born a man when really you should have been born a woman. It's not fair either. Mentally, you're female. Physically, they gave you the wrong parts. It's not your fault, but it's also not the fault of other women who you're going to be competing against. So to make it fair, doesn't it make sense that the IOC would either have to lower the threshold, 10? I mean, even 5 would be twice as much as the majority of women would ever have. Even 5 is high. And for 12 months? Really? You think that you're going to lose all the advantages you had growing up as a male your entire life, training enhanced because of the testosterone that you were born with, and then you take it away for 12 months? You think that's enough to make it fair? It is not. Can I go off HRT for a year, compete as a female in the bench press? I'm a world record holder in the bench press. I'm going to transition to female and compete against other women. Does that sound fair? Of course not. And consider this alternative, which would make way more sense. Why don't they adopt another category? Transgender. Transgender can compete together. Think of this. When you compete in bodybuilding, weightlifting, boxing, wrestling, MMA, they have weight classes because it's not really fair for the smaller person to compete against the bigger person. And when you get older and you compete in triathlons, like Coach Greg, 45, you compete in what's called masters. You get to be 50, you get grandmasters. They have separate categories to make it fair within that division. So why can't we just add another division? They do it all the time. Ever heard of the Paralympics? You're missing a leg. You can compete against other athletes who are also missing a leg, making it fair. Be hard to compete other athletes with 2 legs when you only have 1. And in the Paralympics, each event has divisions within divisions. Depending on the severity of your disability, they have different categories. Level 1, level 2, 3, 4, 5. To make it fair. Isn't that what people want? To have fair, level playing field? Competition where you have equal chance to win? Isn't that what people want? True competition would be everyone is in one division. The best of the best survive. The problem is that will almost always be male at the top end of the sport. Males were born with more testosterone, making it extremely difficult for females to compete against males at the top end of the spectrum. The fastest runners in the world, the strongest people, the best fighters, almost always the males are going to beat the females. Therefore, they created a separate division to make it fair. So when people say, well, transgender females, they should be allowed to compete in the females division. No, that female division was created at a time when there was no transgender competing openly. No one knew about it. They created the female category to make it more fair so more people could participate. More people could be involved in sport. If there was only one division, no age groups or weight classes, it'd be filled with larger males. There wouldn't be as much representation in the Olympics or in sport in general. So adding more categories isn't to exclude, it's to include. Inclusion. By having separate categories, they're allowing for more inclusion in sports, allowing more people to participate. So why not add another division, the transgender division? Why not? When I enter a bodybuilding show, they have juniors, open men, masters, grandmasters, wheelchair division, classic physique, board shorts, bodybuilding open, tall, short, lightweight, middleweight. There's tons of divisions. Why can't we just add transgender? Where is the harm in that? Does that not show inclusion? Does that not show respect? Is that transphobic? Females born as male have a genetic advantage over other women. It's plain as day, it's obvious. Don't need a science experiment to know this. Just open your eyes, look at all the world records around the world. It is obvious. So rather than using this as an excuse to divide us, to separate us, why can't we be more inclusive? Why can't we just add another division? They deserve another division. We don't want to hate on anyone. We don't want to discriminate. And how is it discriminatory to recognize trans and say, here's your division, compete as trans and be proud. Don't be afraid to be trans. Be proud of being trans. Be proud of who you are. There is nothing wrong with it. Does it not make more sense to recognize trans and promote that than to try to hide it and pretend it doesn't exist? Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette, IB Pro. Watch one of the bloops. Follow me on the gram, the talk, subscribe, click the bell button, or unsubscribe because you don't like trans. I support them. You can unsubscribe. Buy my freaking cookbooks or coaching plans. And until next time, I am out.